Look at this. I got headphones on. I got a mic going. Baby.
If
Huh?
only people could see you now.
Hey, no video. We've gone through this before.
All right,
No
all right,
video.
all right. Welcome to This Commerce Life. This is a podcast aimed at small, medium entrepreneurs focused on commerce. I'm Phil, your host, and Kenny, your co-host, will join us as well. And we're going to talk to you about the world of retail and commerce and how things are changing in the world.
Hi, Denise.
Hi, Phil.
How are you?
Good. How are you? Nice to meet you.
Good. Nice to meet you.
Okay.
And then I had Kenny, and then I lost Kenny.
I don't understand this stupid thing. It makes me so mad. This technology is shit. I sign on, it signs me off. I can't get on. I can't get on. I don't know what the hell I'm doing.
Come on, you've had like 17 months to get this together, Ken.
I do 7 or 8 of these a day, and I still have nothing but trouble. And they all laugh at me. I don't know what address I'm going to. Is this the right meeting? I'm always texting. Oh, am I in the right meeting? Because I can never seem to get into anything.
Nice.
I think they do it on purpose. I'm actually convinced they do it on purpose because, it makes everybody feel better if there's one knucklehead on the crew. There you go. You still at the office?
Yes.
What's the matter with you?
Just because well, it's just quieter here.
It's 8 o'clock. It's time to go home.
Well, it's quieter. Like, home is, home is home.
Yeah,
I like boundaries.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. Have your
true.
boundaries. Have your boundaries.
It's true. My office, I have no boundaries because my office is a tiny little desk in the corner, and people come and go. The kids do whatever they want. The dog does whatever they want. Yeah, it's true.
See, mine's my daughter's old bedroom, which I've made into my office, right?
Mhm.
So there's nobody here. Amelia's downstairs. Daniel, he's downstairs somewhere. I don't know what the hell he's doing.
I'm 1 week away from being able to move into my son's room and do. Who am I kidding? I have 3 women in the house who are like, yeah, sure, that'll be your room.
Yeah.
It's gonna be closet space before it's your room.
Yeah, I think so. So
Plus, is Kathy going to allow you to steal the room already? Because that's sort of, see, the difference with Carly. Carly moved out 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Right. So she's not coming back. I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't take this room over until, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago. Like you got to give it. Like you can't just. There's no way she's going to let you take the kids' room away in the first couple of weeks.
I'm taking
it's not
it.
Gonna happen.
Yeah, you snooze, you lose, man. Like I get in there before anybody else. I'm in. Like
you know what? If that makes you feel
possession
better,
is
Phil,
9/10 of the law, right? So I get in there fast, change the door locks. Nobody else understands how to change door locks besides me. It'll be fine. It'll be my room.
You know what? Sure.
Come on,
I'm
you can't
happy
even
for
give
you.
me that. Like,
I wouldn't even think that because I know what would happen in our house. So sure, if you think you can get away with that, light it up. Whatever makes you happy, just do. I'm not going to stop you.
Oh man. Denise, it's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, Phil.
Yeah.
I've heard a lot.
Oh,
I feel like I know you from. I feel like I know you from the other episodes.
You've listened to a few?
You've listened to us?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Really? Hey, that's like
Thank you
prep.
for
You're not allowed to
listening.
do that. I told you, no
Yeah.
prep. You don't listen. I'm no prep.
I'm an accountant. I need rules.
Yeah.
Yeah, we know that.
We know. We're familiar with this.
Yeah, we're both
Yeah.
married to CPAs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Oh man.
that's a scary world.
So we have Denise Wong on today. And Kenny, do you want to do an intro?
I can. I mean,
Yeah.
it's funny. I've never met Denise personally. I've only met Denise on Zoom.
Right.
Denise this firm is called D Squared Consulting CPA. The reason I know Denise is because she has now joined the La Grotta family. So
awesome.
Denise is our accountant.
Quasi.
I know, yeah, she's
chief
sort of
finance
CFO, but she's
Yeah.
she's, as all finance people do, Phil, how they all become sort of the queen or the king of the planet, and they do it so nefariously because they look really nice and then they kind of sneak in and just cause nothing but trouble. One of those.
Well, I don't know if I look nice and snuck in. I kind of just showed up.
Same. See? One
followed
day
your
we didn't
steps.
have anybody. Next day we had somebody. And we're thinking, oh, okay.
You know, finance people, right?
I know,
They show
they
up
have
and they
a
go,
way.
they ask you things like, how are you going to pay for that? Where's the
thinking,
money
what
for
do you
that?
mean?
Like, you know, like, and
Do
you're
we have
like,
a budget for
well,
that?
wait, nobody asked me
Yeah,
those
we say
questions
no
before.
a lot, don't we?
Yeah.
Aren't we the negative Nellies?
What does Mark call them? What is it? The no sales department? No, or
The no sales department.
The no fun department.
or no, something like that.
No,
It's
the no sales department. But he's quite liberal with that term, though. He calls us that too.
Yeah, he calls all of us that too.
Yeah,
You're right.
Yeah.
So one of our friends says that about finance and accounting. It's out of the no sales department or the sales reduction department or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So finance people always get that kind of shit thrown at them.
Yeah.
But it's funny because you know what? It's Phil, because we never had an accountant. Well, we had an accountant in La Grota, but it was really, I think we had probably a bookkeeper, and we threw shit at the accountant once a year to do the audit, and I would assume file the financials, etc. But really, like most small companies, and this is sort of, Denise, this is why we wanted to have you on. Phil and I have been talking we've 3.5 years doing this podcast, and we've never had an accountant on. Yeah. And we've said it a million times, like we've had lawyers on, we've had consultants like us on, whether it's marketing or PR, but never could get an accountant to come on and say, okay, if you're a small business and you're starting up, here's the things you need to think of. Like actually having a sales forecast may not be the worst idea. Yeah. Knowing how much inventory you have may not be the worst idea.
Right.
Understanding what cash flow means could be beneficial. Who knows?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So it's all those fun things that we kind of wanted to have you on it. And from more of a smaller business perspective, is give us some, give our viewers and probably Phil and I some advice on, you know, what to look for, what you should be thinking about, why you should be thinking about that, etc. Yeah. But before that, ideally, what we love you to do is maybe just let everybody know who you are, what you do, why you do it, where you came from. Whatever you want. Sure. It's your podcast. So Phil and I will just sit back and you can do whatever you want.
I have one thing to add before you start.
Go.
And that is, and I tell this story a lot, is when I was at J&J, we used to, I was kind of the trade marketer, sales, did trade marketing. And one of the things that I really hated, because somewhere in the middle of my term there, we kind of like had to start getting really close to finance folks, and the finance folks got a say in whether we, like the sales guys would run promotions and things like that. And I would come home, and in the early days, I'd get so angry. And like my wife, she's an accountant, she's a CA, CPA, runs a finance group, and she would never say anything, right? Like just, she would listen to me rant. And then it finally occurred to me that, wait, I understand what these guys are here for, right? Like, it's not to say no. They do say no a lot, but they give me an extra dimension to how things should be run. And there's like a lot of insight, and I really grew to like it. And so I got to a point where it was distressing not to have the finance person nearby if I was starting to build things, because you start to realize, like, wait, what am I looking at? Right? Like, what am I, like, the sales and marketing guys, we have our spins, we have the way we look at things, but the finance person always just has that extra perspective around what is that extra dimension, right? And it always seems to make things a little bit more about it. So that's my pitches. If you're listening to this and you're going, oh my gosh, it's a CPA, I'm going to turn off the episode or anything like that. Like, because I do think accountants get a bad rap, right? Because it's always like, and I want to ask you, I have a bunch of questions I want to ask you later, but there are things like, like people confuse, like, what's a bookkeeper? What's an accountant? What is, and like all of those things I want to ask you. But I think if you're listening, I would say to you now that the person, the accountant that is in your group, you should really have them nearby all the time, because there is an extra dimension to what they do that just makes everything, that much more valuable when you're doing it. So that's my spiel.
It's okay. I'll even
I'm
go
excited.
one step further before
Yeah.
she starts.
Okay.
I'll tell listeners this. If there's one episode you're going to listen to,
Yeah.
especially if you're a small business
Yeah.
just starting up,
This one.
a definitively
This one.
entrepreneurial, listen to this one.
This one.
Finance is the
No
one
pressure,
that gets
Denise.
the most shit and grief. And like sales and marketing say, the no fun department, the always no department.
Yeah.
There's reasons why this is critical
Yeah.
for businesses to understand. And that's why, Denise, seriously, all bullshitting aside, I was super happy to have you on and,
we really
and
were.
do this because we've been trying to find somebody that would be able to come on and help people understand that, like Phil said, bookkeeper, accountant, the auditor, whatever it is. But again, before we go, who you are, what you do, why you do, and then with the show will go where the show goes.
Denise is like,
right.
I'm out of here. There's no way I'm I'm hanging
She's
on.
used
I
to-
got internet issues.
I've been on about
I'm
10
outta
meetings
here.
with her. She's used to me by now. She knows nothing changes. It's the same. It's a little chaotic all the time.
Well, first of all, I'm honored to be one of the first accountants, if not the only accountants, and hopefully not the last accountant.
The only 200 episodes, the only one.
Hopefully not the last. And if people are listening, hopefully they haven't turned off by now. I won't get into spreadsheets. I won't talk about nitty gritty. I won't talk about formulas. Thank you for inviting me on. I'm actually kind of excited. It's sort of my first foray into sort of telling people how accounting is a crucial part and fundamental part of life and business. And it can be done in a not as stressful way if you've got the right people around you, surrounding you. So as you mentioned, I'm Denise. I have a CPA licensed firm here in BC. Our mandate is to help our clients grow beyond the numbers by helping them take back control of their finances, whether it be personal or business finance. I'm definitely not your average accountant. This is actually my third career. I was a scientist and then an ESL teacher or tutor. I took commerce at UBC. And I distinctly remembering thinking to myself, wow, I'm never going to be an accountant. This is terrible. And you know how the saying goes, you always become what you say you'll never be. So pow, here I am. I'm a CPA and I'm proud to be a CPA, guys.
Oh God.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
I didn't know you had those other careers.
Yeah, so scientist. I actually have a degree from UBC in chemistry, and obviously I graduated when it was sort of poor recession times. I remember when it was like $6 or $7 minimum wage, and you had to kind of write proposals of why you needed grants from the government to get research science type jobs. It was pretty hard, and then I shifted into ESL teaching, and it was through my ESL teaching of business professionals from international audit firms that I got the inspiration to basically go back to school and be an auditor. My students told me, teacher, you're young, be an auditor. It's sexy. You make lots of money. You get to travel. I was sold.
An auditor is sexy.
Hey, who would have known, right?
Who would have thunk?
Yeah. And so I'm a classically trained CPA, CA. I think we have to do that for a couple more years until the full 10 years of Chartered Professional Accountants unifications completed, just to let everybody know what our legacy letters are. But I went through that whole traditional articling at a Big Four firm, got to see really interesting. Yeah, had to write the 3-day UFI. That's kind of where I'm at.
I have post-traumatic stress syndrome from going, with my girlfriend, then fiance, then wife, and the whole UFI. Hey, yeah. I always joke about that. I always kind of go, why? Why is there no support group for the spouses who have to go through this?
But I might have gone through. I don't know. I thought UP summer was amazing. We got the summer off. We studied, like if you did it, properly, it was a 9 to 5 study job. And I think I remembered picking up and learning how to play volleyball and, those beach league, beer league volleyball. I learned to play volleyball that summer. I worked out. I looked great after the exam. It was great. I had a great summer.
Yeah. This is why it's not for you. It's for the spouses.
Yeah. You weren't listening to you. Said, well, it wasn't about you. It was all about
It
Phil.
wasn't-
It had nothing to do with
it's
you.
not about you.
How did we get to you?
Oh my God, what are you? I'm like, what are you talking about? Of course.
Of course, it was good for you. Who cares? What about Phil?
No, but I think it's a tough process, right? Like, you know, lots of people wash out from the UFI process as well, and you know, so it's a great process. And then you know, so you did articling, and then where did you go after you did your articling and you got your UFI?
Sure. I actually thought I was going to be a lifer at the firm. I thought I'd stay, you know, and do that ultimate, you know, become a partner. But you know, at time, it's very interesting, right? There's lots of different companies here in Vancouver in the Lower Mainland, and the job market was hot at the time, and there were just lots of different opportunities that were available. And I ended up going to a global multinational public organization. So spent some time, probably spent about 6 years there. Then burnt out, but didn't know at the time I was burnt out. So thought I needed a change in pace and moved out of public company into a private organization. And it's still Vancouver. So, you know, tourism and real estate are sort of your top, or mining, right, are sort of your top industries. And I ended up in real estate. So did that for about almost 2 years, and realized I really was burnt out and took a sabbatical. Traveled a little bit, thought I was going to take a 6-month sabbatical, lasted about 3. And on the shores of Australia, I realized I wanted to come back and do public practice again. And it was on the shores of Australia that I realized I was going to come back, start my own firm, and help small businesses, because they were the people who needed expertise and advice more than sort of big companies did.
Totally.
Oh.
Totally. Good for you.
Were you playing volleyball on the shores of Australia?
I'm actually a really big tennis fan. So I was actually at the
Yes.
Australian Open. So
Nice.
I was watching some tennis, and I came to that realization.
Watching Rafa win another Australian Open.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you've
Awesome.
been in your own practice now for how long then? Like how many years now?
This will be my 5th year.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah.
And then, so so with your practice, what kinds of firms, like what kinds of companies do you work with? What, I don't know, Kenny and I talk about this too. Like in this business, you start to gravitate towards businesses that you like, you know, you start to see those things. Is there anything like what, let's start with the first one.
Sure.
What kind of companies do you work with?
Yeah. So in the very first couple of years of the firm, I really started out as a consultant. I was doing sort of change projects, I call financial change projects. So a lot of those are, I need a new system, or my books are a mess. I just don't even know where to start. So all kind of came around some sort of automation, some sort of need for a system. And when I say a system, it doesn't always mean, you know, like a financial system, like a QuickBooks or a Sage, or like a bigger system, like, you know, anything that Microsoft does or SAP. It wasn't always that. Systems also mean like business processes, also just documentation, like what are we doing? Some, you know, a lot of my clients in the beginning were companies that had just grown massively, and processes and people hadn't kept up. And so, you know, when that doesn't keep up, you know, unfortunately, accounting and finance and the numbers are sort of 6 months lagging behind. And by the time an accountant gets involved, I don't want to say it's almost too late, but it becomes very stressful for everybody involved.
Yeah, unless you're lucky and you've been chugging along and there was some money built up, you know, but you're right. Otherwise, by the time you see it, it could be like just literally too late. Wow. So what size are they typically doing? So they like,
so what size?
2 million, 10 million, 5 million, 100 million?
Yeah. So consulting, usually when we're doing systems and financial projects, they're usually large organizations. So those are usually sort of $100 million in gross revenues or something like that.
Mhm.
But sort of halfway through, after the first 2 years, that was fun and all. But again, I went back to my why, right? On the beaches of Australia, why did I set up this firm, right? And the firm was set up to basically help small business owners, or even just business owners, get back control, because all I could see was so much stress that people had, managing numbers, not just business but also personal, because as a small business owner, it leaks into your personal life as well.
Sometimes
right?
they can be the exact same.
Right. And so in the basically moving into the third year of the firm, we basically decided to let's do a little bit of focus. We started to focus on female entrepreneurs, solopreneurs wanting to kind of move beyond the one person, hire the first employee type organization. And a lot of it was because we wanted to help build financial literacy around decisions that were being made. One of the biggest, one of our biggest, I don't want to say pet peeves, but one of the things that we wanted to help was not, because a lot of people, when it comes to taxes and money and finances, you kind of ask your best friend, what are you doing? Then you kind of go and ask your neighbor, what are you doing? Or maybe your neighbor voluntarily tells you what they're doing, right? So you end up with a bit of this keeping up with the Joneses kind of idea, right? And so you don't always know what the true rules are. Remember, I started off saying I really like rules. So if you don't have that information, this is going to sound trite, you don't know what you don't know, and you only know what you've been told, right, which may or may not be true.
Yeah.
Right. And so that was one of the things we wanted to do, was give people that nugget, that strength and the knowledge to be able to take back and claim back their power to make financial decisions that would benefit themselves, their families, and their businesses.
I like it.
Yeah, I like that too.
You're our people, Denise.
See, that's why we like Denise. That's why she's on the show, right? Because we're very similar. I mean, I think Phil and I, when we probably started our consulting little things that we do, is at the beginning you sort of take everything, and then as you start to really hone in, you're thinking, I only like certain people, and I only like certain things, and I think I should be entitled to just do whatever the hell I want. And if I don't like that company or that person, I don't think I have to work for them. So you start to pick and choose things based on what you really like and believe, and you attach yourself to people that you want to help, right? You want to be a part of it. So that's very cool.
Yeah. So one of the biggest things we do is try to debunk as many myths as we can.
Oh man.
There's a lot in that one. Finance has got a shitload of myths. Some not myths, some pretty true, but a lot of myths.
Yeah, and helping people, helping people not make decisions based purely on taxes, right?
Right.
What? 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 No. I'm sorry. It's just I love this. What's one myth that you hear a lot of?
What's one myth that I hear a lot?
I feel like so between Kenny and I, when we do sales marketing stuff, there's so many, it's the same thing. So honestly, when you said you don't know what you don't know, we laugh about that all the time, right? Because we just run into people that they literally don't know, right? And they're like, oh, I did it like this. And we're going, oh my God, like what were you thinking, right? But they didn't know. And I think like we run into tons and tons of myths all the time, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm just so curious, because I think these are things that depending on what you answer, your phone might be ringing.
Exactly, because I think there's a lot of people that are thinking, oh shit, I didn't, oh really?
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Well, maybe it's not a myth, but maybe it's an approach. How about that?
Okay.
So as you know, there's only two things in life that are guaranteed, right? Death and taxes.
Yes.
Right. So the big one is I think the biggest myth people or fallacy that people believe in is you can get rid of taxes. You can't.
No.
CRA has thought through everything. Right? They even have something called GAR, which is, I think, an anti-avoidance rule, a general anti-avoidance rule. So they've thought through everything.
Is that GAR?
Yeah, that's probably how it came about.
Depends on whose side you're on. If you're on the side that's getting caught, it's probably that. Yes. On their side, maybe not so much.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. And so a lot of, business owners, we have a cardinal rule that we try to teach our business owners is personal and business finances should not be commingled, but co-managed. And so if you've got the right knowledge, then you can actually balance the two, because you kind of have to think of personal and business finances as a teeter-totter, right? It's got to be balanced. If one side is really happy, the other side's probably not too happy, and vice versa, right? And so when it goes back to taxes, a lot of people, I think most people know that in Canada, and as a small business, taxes are lower from a corporation perspective as opposed to a personal individual. So you want to basically have your company be taxed and you taxed less, right? So now one of the traps some owners get into is, well, let's try and put as many expenses into the company, reduce net income, lower our taxes, which is a, that's a valid approach. But then what if you get into growth mode and you need to start asking banks and lenders for money? They're going to start asking you, well, Kenny, Phil, what's your EBITDA? And if your EBITDA is negative and you've got a loss or a very small positive number because you've tried to reduce your net income and not pay taxes, now you're not looking like a very viable or positively, profitable company. So lenders and banks are going to start going, and it becomes a bit more difficult. Now, it's not to say you can't do it. I mean, there's a lot of work that now your controller or your CFO or your banker and your lender have to now go into talks about, normalizing numbers. Well, what's the real number? Now we get into sort of what I call accounting magic, and we need to kind of find that medium that the business and the banks will then be okay with to start lending. But that's an example of an approach, right? Where it might be short-sighted to constantly reduce net income, when if you have a business plan that shows, aggressive growth in the next 3 to 5 years, you may want to consider, right? Do I want to maybe pay a little bit of taxes and not take too much salary or something out of the company because I want to preserve it in the company?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, that's a great example, right? It is one of those things that, even from a sales marketing perspective, you're thinking about things, but you may be thinking short term, right? Because we're thinking daily, you're thinking about 4 to 6 months, 3 to 5 months, and what's out. But it is that kind of long-term view that the short and long that you've got to be able to play to make sure that you're balancing it right? I really like that. Yeah.
And then the next typical question will be, well, Denise, do I pay myself a salary or dividends? Right? So very nicely tied into that same example is, I myself, I have an employment contract with my firm. I pay myself a salary. And that's great for T4 purposes, because when I go personally to renew my home, the bank wants to see my T4. So if you've only been doing dividends, you're not going to have a T4. The bank doesn't accept dividends as that earned income. Right. So this is where you need to have, this is where I call the Holy Trinity. You need the tax accountant, the lawyer, and the certified financial planner to kind of make sure that, hey, that teeter-totter of business and personal finance are in place and balance.
Yeah.
Have I blown your minds yet?
Oh, you're blowing a lot of people's minds.
Yeah.
Typically a lot of the small, you don't think of those things, right?
Right.
Because typically what they do, as soon as they start the company or whatever, is that sort of, to me, I think what a lot of them do is what you just said, is a lot of them go right to, okay, I'm going to set a company. I'm going to set a company because I can get lower taxes. First thing they're thinking of. And they're not thinking of, the reason you do a company maybe is because you want to detach your personal, you don't want to have personal business liabilities tied together necessarily. You don't want someone taking the house and yada, yada. There's a division then between you and the company. which might be the only reason you do it. And the taxes is just a byproduct of it. And you don't make it the goal of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like paying taxes suck, and I get it. But paying taxes also shows that you're making money. Paying taxes does show others that you're successful. Right? I mean, it does make it not just for venture capitalists who want to play with you or others, or when it comes to valuation of your company, you know, it's tough to value a company that's losing perpetually at a high value. It's a little more problematic, right?
I think also just I mean, those two questions, they come up a lot, right? Amongst like people that I know in business, people I network with. I have friends that are also, you know, consultants. And we talk about it a lot, but you realize like you just like it's like a closed circuit of people that you talk to, and that there's a handful of myths. They really are myths or urban legends, right? You kind of go like, oh, just get a corporation, it'll be fine, right? Like you don't have to pay yourself anything. You're like, this can't be.
So why isn't everybody doing that? Like, why is that?
Yeah, you know, like you know, like this is great. Like based on this formula, like every corp should have a Ferrari and like a Land Rover, and you know, what's the big deal, right? Like, you know, but you kind of go, I guess some of that makes sense and some of it doesn't, but I guess you never really, it's the sort of thing that I guess everyone thinks they know. But really,
you only know what you know, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's why you ask people. That's the point.
Well, you ask the right people, really.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's gotta be tough too, though, right? Because I think it's a tough job, because I think because of your role, you're not the no person, but you're the there are other ways to do that. Like, is that really what you want to do? Right? Like Kenny and I find ourselves doing that a lot.
Yeah.
Is that what you're thinking? Are you open to other ways to do that? Like,
or how did you get to that?
Yeah. How do you say no without saying no? Right? Like, you know, let's think about this more.
Because truly, really and truly, if you really think about like the finance accounting department, typically is sort of the one who signs it. And a lot of times, you know, because I come from the sales and marketing side like Phil, and typically our side is just, well, what do you mean? I mean, it was a great idea. Look at it.
No, Denise, I gotta do it.
Yeah,
I gotta do it.
No, don't worry about that part. Look at the idea. The ideas are phenomenal. And you know, and that other side always comes up, and they talk about the money, and they're losing money. You're thinking, who gives a shit? Look at the idea. It was killer. How could you not sign off on this great idea?
Denise, it'll all work out. I promise you, it all just.
You know the new cars now with all the technology and the blind spot checker and the lane departure. That's what us accountants are. We're your blind spot checkers and your lane departure warnings.
Yeah,
I like that.
That's actually not a bad way to look at it, right?
That's not a bad way to look at it.
Yeah,
and we all seem to be okay with those.
I turn mine off now.
I don't have one, so I'm still old school. I still drive a stick. I like, you know, an old car.
Yeah.
But really what we're doing is actually helping business owners manage risk.
That's probably the best way to look at it, really, to some degree, right?
So can we talk about, because I think the other interesting piece is some of the mechanics, right? So if you, like it's great. You help manage risk. You help them see long term. But in order to do that, like an entrepreneur that, you know, let's be honest, right? Like a lot of entrepreneurs, they learn cash flow the hard way. They learn, you know, and by that I mean
if they ever actually learn it properly.
Yeah. Well, right, by that I mean they run out of money.
Well, they run out of money. So they still haven't learned, so they keep drawing in until they get an accountant who doesn't explain it to them because they've given up.
Yeah.
But so they learn cash flow then by not learning it. They just got someone else protecting their ass.
Well, yeah, or they learn it by like just knowing how to not break it, right? But they don't actually learn the balance. Like, you know, explaining, like receivables and payables and the relationship between the two, right?
Yeah.
Like all of those things, right? So like, how do you like, is that a common thing? Like, do you find small businesses that, do they understand that stuff in general, or is this something that it feels almost like you've got to teach this stuff all the time as you're working?
Yeah, I think it's a continuous improvement thing around financial literacy. I mean, think about it. We went to school for how many years to become accountants to know this,
Mm-hmm.
right? As an entrepreneur, you have your genius, you have your idea, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's actually unrealistic to expect a business owner to know everything about accounting, bookkeeping, and finance. I think that's, everybody has a role, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think it is a continuous learning loop. I find money and finance are very emotional, and it's tied to a lot of how do I say? It could be your education, your upbringing, what people around you tell you. That definitely has an influence, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So when, okay, because a lot of listeners are going to be smaller businesses
Mm-hmm.
or businesses just getting to that point. And you know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
they're just like, when do they start? Like, I guess I'm trying to figure out, like, when do they actually because I'm assuming what happens with most people, you start a business, you run a bank account, you're doing maybe some stuff on a spreadsheet, maybe not even, it's probably a napkin, if that, a couple envelopes, the old shoebox thing, or it's all up in your head, right? Then you get to the point where you might say to somebody, I need a little help. And they say, you know what you need like a QuickBooks or something like that. Like, when does it,
Yeah.
when do you see that they come to you finally? And when would you have rather that they came to you? So that if someone's listening on our side, if they're at that point where they're, let's say, debating QuickBooks or something else, or simply accounting, or they're at like, when do they typically go to you? But when would you rather have seen them? Does that make sense?
It's a great question. Most people come to me or seek me out when they're overwhelmed. There's too much paper. I've got hundreds and thousands of, bank transactions. I don't know what to do with them. To Phil's point, I've got AR building up, but AP seems to be, money's going out the door every day, but money's not coming in. So usually it's because the business owners had the full intention of getting back on track, finish up, close up shop, at night, go home, have dinner, and then open up the laptop and, continue on, after dinner kind of thing. And sometimes that just doesn't happen because you're tired. You've been, as a business owner, right? And this is a lot of my clients, is they work really hard. They're doing sales, they're doing marketing, they're actually, doing their core business during the day for maybe 10 or 12 hours. The last thing they should be doing is bookkeeping and paperwork, right? So one day slips, it's 2 days, now it's 1 month, 3 months, 6 months. So now it's Denise, it's just kind of ballooned out of control, help, right? And sometimes it's because CRA is called and they haven't made their installments for GST. Sometimes it's because, like Phil, you were saying, they've run out of cash, right? When would I have liked them to come? I mean, everybody wants to be proactive. It's very difficult as a business owner. We all know that.
For sure.
But I think what it is consistency is the thing that I think kills a lot of people who want to do their own bookkeeping, because, like I said, you're working 10 to 12 hours on your core business. Then you, after dinner, as a thing side of your desk, you're doing bookkeeping. You've forgotten what, you do it amazing one night. Then you pick it up 3 weeks later and you've forgotten what you've done, right? Oh, did that Staples thing go to office supplies, or did I put that in equipment? Oh, wait, I just bought a photocopier. So is that equipment or is that office? Do I capitalize it? Do I expense it? Now we've got into sort of really complicated questions, right? And everybody will have a different answer because we're going to go and crowdsource, right? We're going to ask a bunch of people what they do, and then we'll do it. And so then I think when you start a business, it'd be really good to have a business plan, sit down with a few trusted advisors. Like Kenny, you were saying, maybe map out, what do you think your first year of business is going to look like? What do you think the second year could look like? What do you think are some of your fixed costs? What are some of your variable costs? And a second cardinal rule is you want to make sure that your income is greater than your expenses. And again, a lot of startup businesses, it might be minus for a couple of months, maybe a couple of years, but we need to make sure that we have a plan that somehow gets us to a point where our revenues are in excess of our expenses, because otherwise we don't have a viable business.
I think the sad part is everything you said is what should happen. And the last part you said is probably what more than not happens. That's what happens. So nobody's going in and saying, first off, very few probably start a business plan. It's
Right.
just a great idea. And I agree. It doesn't, does not make a business. It's just an idea. They don't maybe map out what the revenue and expenses could have been, should be, they're not thinking that way. It's a cool idea. I need 50 grand. I got 50 grand. Shit, no brainer. Let's go. Right. And then before you know it, to Phil's point, well, you ran out of the 50. Well, I've got access to another 50 if we really need, because this idea is still solid, right? Because the idea hasn't changed. It's a great idea.
Yeah.
And then you make those steps, right? And if there's anything it's funny, we had a lawyer buddy of ours who also works with La Grota on and saying the same thing. Like, there's probably a few key people that you don't want because because of the myths and connotation, but you really need them on your side at the beginning. How do you set up? What do you set up? A sole proprietorship, a corporation? Mm-hmm. What do I do with the books? Because I'm that one. I can do the spreadsheet and I get my columns, or I can go into a program. I watch the expenses for about a week and then I don't give a shit, right? Because it should just run. And then 6 months later, I just tell Amelia, I've completely fucked all this up. I don't know what I've done. I've lost receipts. I don't know where things are. Where did this money go? I don't remember. Did you write it down? Well,
oh no,
I think I might have wrote it down.
I won't let Kathy. Kathy's offered to do. Kathy's my wife. She's offered to do my books, and I'm so afraid. I'm like, I don't want you to leave me. So I'm so afraid the other way.
I can't do them. I don't know where anything is.
I know, but that's how afraid, because I'm just like, I am a moving disaster. Like, I've tried to automate, so I run everything through a credit card, and then I've got it tied into Wave. So I use Wave as my invoicing system. I started to balance that stuff. So I'm careful about that stuff. And then I'm sure I ask Kathy the same questions over and over again about, where does this go? Where does that go? What do I do with this expense? What do I do with memberships? What do I do with software subscriptions? Are they the same as other subscriptions? So I'm sure I make her crazy like that, but I can't. I actually do my own HST.
We're one people
actually,
shows. Like, we're not running, a retail operation, a wholesale operation, or a business with a restaurant. Like, it's just you and I. It's me. You're you. I don't have a ton of things, but I still don't manage it.
But I think that is like, so, like, because you banged on, and I felt like that's like a question for me is, I'm starting to, like, the practice has been around for 3 years or so now. I think I've lost track, but somewhere in there, right? And I'm starting to get to a place where I am looking at the business going, okay, I when it was just me, and really just me, I was able to automate many of those things, right? Like, receipts, I scan receipts and they get sorted, and I tied my receipt scanner to my Wave app. So, everything kind of like comes together nicely. But between doing the work that is required to get the money for the business, and then doing the marketing and the networking to make sure that I've got a nice pipeline for the business, and then making sure that the automation doesn't break on the finance side of the business, there's not really a whole lot of time for me to look at the business and go, am I doing the right thing? Like, I just had this conversation with a friend who's like, hey, he says to me, my business is getting big enough, I'm going to have to incorporate. He goes, what do you think of that? And I go, I don't know what to think of that. I've heard
Sounds
you,
cool.
I've heard you have to be a certain income before it's really worthwhile. And he's like, what's that income? And I said to him, I don't know. Like, I know what
I
I
don't
heard,
know.
but I'm not giving you that number.
Yeah.
Because it's just a rumor. And if I say it, you're going to go, well, Phil said that. I'm like, no, like, I know better than that. You can call my wife. You can call somebody else. I don't want, I don't want, but I do. So like because I think there are like people in my situation, for example, right, that are building businesses. So then someone like me should be calling someone like you as I start to, I guess, quote unquote, hit my stride, right? Like, and so as I feel my business steadying out, I can give you a more reliable pulse on where I'm going to be, right? Like my business has been, quite steady for the last 18 months or so. So I kind of feel like I'm getting a rhythm. So it's probably a good time to be calling someone like you to go, hi, well, what do you see that I don't see, right? Like, I think that's how this should work, right?
See, I wonder, but I don't think that's how it does. I think because you're thinking in your head, things are still okay and seem to be running smoothly, and that there's a positive in the bank account. At that point, I don't think, what Denise becomes, well, that's going to cost me though. Like, what the fuck am I going to phone her for? Because now what's she going to tell me? She's going to give me some stuff and my number's going to go down because I got to pay for this now.
But the trigger, I think, for me is like, we run like, so like Kenny and I is like, well, I'll speak for me, right? So as a consultant, I don't have crazy expenses, right? So the moment the business turns a little bit different than, like, if I was a brand and I was making things, there's a different pulse to the business, right? Because I need a float, I need to make sure I've got enough money, I've got to be able to make stuff, store stuff, ship stuff. In my case, you quickly hit almost a static amount of expenses, and then when you start building revenue, the little tax brain in my head, like, honestly, it's like a pea, right? Like, it's not the part of my brain that's overly developed or anything. It's right beside the pea size calculator in my head, the one that needs to use my fingers to count crap. But that's, that little part of my brain goes, you're going to pay the government lots of taxes, like, right away, hide the money in a mattress, right? But I feel like, like those, isn't that kind of the moment you want to trigger?
Does Phil need help, Denise? Is that what I think ultimately we've had this
with other people.
911. So we've had business coaches on, etc. And Phil does this. He goes down these holes, and Phil needs help. Doesn't it sound like it?
All I'm just saying, like, because I think
Denise needs to answer this, because I think you need help.
Yeah, I know, but what I'm trying to get to is, I think entrepreneurs out there all have that trigger of like, crap, I'm going to pay money, but it goes away really fast because entrepreneurs are really, really good at leaning into the idea. And then when they find things that don't fit the idea, they lean harder into the idea.
Yeah,
right?
So drop those things.
Because I can outrun it. Yeah. It's kind of the myth, right? So I'm just after that. Is I'm hoping that there are entrepreneurs listening who hear that and feel that emotion, right? Because I think that is a trigger that you should be calling someone like Denise. No?
Yes, I completely agree. And I think congratulations if, as a consultant, you've gotten to a point where your expenses have now started to flatten and plateau. And everything after that, from a revenue perspective, is, I guess, gravy, right? Is that
well,
bonus?
Knock on wood.
Now,
hopefully
right?
It stays that way. But yes, yeah.
And then to our original conversation around taxes.
Yeah.
I mean, again, what's our view about taxes, right?
Well, it was okay when we had expenses, but now it's not that fun.
Yeah.
Because we have a bit more revenue,
yeah,
right?
because now the spread is larger,
Yeah,
and that means the government gets more. So now what do I do?
Right. Well, now we got to balance your personal and your business finances, right? So this is where we would then sit down with our clients and say, okay, well, again, back to that question of why did we incorporate? Was it for liability reasons? What was it for? Remember, corporations pay a little less tax than us personally.
Mm.
So, if then it's about family and business financial needs. Do you need to take all that money out and be taxed in your own personal pocket? Right. So that's that balance I talk about, right? And with financial planners, we get together and we calculate, well, what's your personal tax bracket if we do this versus what's your company's tax bracket? And then you make the decision as an owner. Do you want to be taxed in your company at a smaller rate or taxed in your own hands at maybe a slightly higher rate?
Right.
And there are thresholds, right? And there's a formula. The government, you can go on there, canada.ca, and type in just 2021 tax brackets, and you can see what your personal tax brackets will be as a person, and then compare where you want to be, how much tax do you want to pay, and it ranges anywhere from 20% all the way to over 50% in today's world.
Right.
Yeah. Which is that balance between personal and business, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But I think the example that Phil and I we use, because if you're the sole person, or even if there's one other person in your world, that's where that's not the most complicated of decisions. You've got, let's say, a retail store or something else, and you've got 7 or 8 employees now, and you've got all these other expenses. Like, do you even get to that? Like, when, because I'm assuming now Phil's trigger happens a lot quicker because he's got a lot less shit going on.
Yeah, my life is simple.
And it's in your and the numbers become quick. You're thinking, well, I had $10,000 in expenses, I made 100. I've got $11,000 expenses, I made 120. Okay, shit, that spread got wrong.
Yeah.
But in a small business, like, it could be like, there's so much other shit going on. Like, you're not. I don't know if you get to that point of thinking of that, or is this getting muddled into another quagmire of things?
I think that's where we get into a little bit more complicated conversations, right? It's not just revenue minus expenses times equals net income times a tax rate. It's not like that anymore. You now have to say, well, what's my forecast? What am I trying to do? Do I want to grow? And now we have to say, well, do we want to invest in our business? How do we want to do that? There's just a lot of decisions then have to be made around this growth. Are we committed to the growth? Because if we're committed to the growth, then yes, there are some other things that we can consider to manage taxes. And this is where tax lawyers, tax accountants come in and start making plans to be tax effective is kind of the terminology, tax efficient.
Right.
I like that term.
I like that term too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we talk about operational efficiency, right? Talk about operational effectiveness. Why can't we do that in taxes as well?
I guess it's
you don't need to defend that at all.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
I think we're all over that one. Like, I think that's a great.
I think the more we talk, and it's funny because when you're starting in that entrepreneurial thing, like, you're just running, and money's coming, money's going, and you're kind of, I think we may look at the bank account, so it's positive, so that I must be doing well, and you just keep moving. If anybody is listening and is at that, to be honest with you, you're probably best off to talk to someone like you from the get-go. Get you to and say, listen, you know what? At the end of the day, it's an expense. It's part of the business. Then write it off, do whatever you need to do, because at the end of the day, it's probably the expense. It's probably having that as a better expense than worrying about running around trying to buy more photocopiers so you can have more photocopier expense, or some stupid office expense, or, buy 3 cameras because you're selling on eBay. You only need the one. That's not the expense you should be looking at. This may be a better expense because it's a planning one. It'll help you. It potentially will help you grow or not fall apart.
Wait, so you bought 3 cameras somewhere?
I didn't say I bought 3 cameras. I said people bought 3 cameras. Okay.
Denise.
Seriously? I bought 3 cameras in the old days, a long time ago. Don't try to spin the table so like I need the help. You're the problem child.
Come on. That was a very specific example.
Because I happen to be looking at a camera here. I'm looking at the camera.
You have receipts for those.
I've already expensed
Denise,
it because it's a
more
legit
help than
expense.
I do. I'm just telling you,
you are such
there is no.
Well, you're such
Send
a
me your
chicken shit.
receipt.
It's already been taken care of, children. Phil is just trying to deflect right now. That's
no,
the Phil
no.
thing.
I've already said I'm fairly sure I need help.
We're talking about other
you
people
had a
and
very, very
hypotheticals.
specific.
I happen to be looking at the camera that I bought for that reason.
Oh my God.
And yes,
Oh
I
my
did
God,
expense
oh
it because it's a legit expense.
my God.
But it wasn't going to save the day. And I don't want to buy 4 more of them to generate an expense. Like, that's not the purpose of it. Even though I would buy 4 more because that's actually a nice little camera, but that's a different story. But you know what I mean? I'm just talking to you. I'm not talking to Phil anymore, Denise. I'll just talk to you. So I think what I'm trying to get, without Phil being here anymore, I'm going to mute him, is I think what people should be doing is probably talking to an accountant or somebody like you at the beginning. Doesn't have to be 50. You don't have to put them on retainer. Yep. Have the discussion, get them to help you. And then go talk to Phil because Phil needs lots of help.
That's right. We can have a talk after Phil.
That's good.
But I think there are also a lot of available resources that a lot of people don't know that actually don't cost money. Small Business BC does a lot of small business resources when it comes to legal, finances, setting up incorporation. I do a lot of financial literacy webinars during COVID for Women's Enterprise Center, for example, where they actually put their webinars for free for female entrepreneurs, and we had a series of 3. We talked about how to manage cash flow, how to actually do a cash flow. We talked about reading financial statements, what do they actually mean, and overall just understanding ratios around numbers. Like, great, you've got a set of numbers, but what do they really mean?
Right.
Because we spend a lot of time, and I think I hope a lot of my peers listening, we spend a lot of time as accountants compiling data, but not necessarily analyzing and taking that next step for that business decision, right? Because we run out of time because it just takes so long to compile this data, right?
Yeah.
I think what other myth, if we're talking about debunking some myths, is a lot of business owners, and this goes back to your original question, Ken, around when would I have liked the business owner to come and talk? For sure at the beginning, and again, a lot of consultants and advisors like myself do complimentary 30-minute calls to pick our brains and have conversations. There's lots of free resources like I mentioned earlier, but the one myth that I see a lot is business owners expect their bookkeepers to be able to give them this advice. And sometimes bookkeepers are not necessarily the right person to answer these questions. And that's not to say that some bookkeepers can't, but bookkeepers are trained to do bookkeeping and not necessarily the taxes piece. Although there are some what I call bookkeeper plus or bookkeeper extraordinaire who have probably been very experienced and been doing this for decades, and they do know their way around, business finances and taxes.
But
I think it's unfair. But I think it's unfair to unload, your expectations on business strategy and taxes and, a tax shelter or a tax plan or something like that on a bookkeeper whose job is to make sure that your receipts are entered into the accounting system.
So is another myth, the maybe with a lot of people's, well, the accountant was X dollars and the bookkeeper was B dollars, and the B dollars was better. So I got the same, I just got it cheaper. Like, what is the difference between a bookkeeper and an accountant?
Really good.
Because a lot of businesses will have to ask that too, because they may look at it. Maybe the bookkeeper's cheaper and they think, well, it's the same thing, just a different word. Maybe this one has a degree or something or whatever, more letters, but I don't care. That's good enough.
Yeah. I actually wrote a little article around this because I kept getting this question. And basically, from my lens, from where I sit as an accountant and a bookkeeper or an accountant that works for your company is primarily focused on doing data entry, reporting transactions, doing AR, AP, maybe sending out some invoices, maybe writing some checks, filing GST or HST in Phil's case, making sure that, your workers' compensation is paid and filed. And again, like I mentioned, education can vary. There are, you can actually go to school and get a bookkeeping certificate, for example. A lot of
can be a little more. Okay, so go. Because we lost Phil. I'm going to say that so you can't cut this out. We lost Phil as usual because is not a techie this week. I don't know what happened to Phil.
No, my
internet's been better,
my internet
and I've been more.
Provider is.
That's okay.
I apologize.
Did you forget to pay your bills, Phil?
Apparently.
No,
You know
I'm
why?
up to
He needs an
date.
accountant.
I'm up
That's
to
his
date.
problem.
No, I'm up.
He doesn't know, Denise. He needs help. We've gone through this.
No. That's not what I need help with. I have.
Just saying.
I
I don't know. It seems odd.
So honestly, in my life, those things are the things that would have made my wife divorce me already. Because those things I was really, really, really terrible at. And then I realized I know how to automate things. So I need to automate all the things that's going to make my wife leave me. So, so almost all of them I automated.
Attaboy.
Yeah.
So Denise, pick up where you left off.
Yes.
Okay. So I think what I said was, I finished the bookkeeping side of things, and I said there are two types of accountants. So the first type of accountant is the accountant that works for your company. They're on your payroll. They're usually an employee. They have titles like accountant, accounting manager, controller, CFO, something like that. So that's an accountant, if you will. And they work for your business versus a year-end accountant or a public practice accountant who's supposed to be independent from your business. They typically will do notice to readers, which are NTRs or financial statements for your company, where they actually there's sort of a package, and the accounting firm is there. They sign off saying that they've compiled this information. Any of the small businesses who have banks or loans that require reviews or audits, this is where your year-end accountant would come in, because they have to maintain that independence. They don't represent the company. They're here to, I guess, check or
they're checking the accountants that
or audit.
Right.
Yes, that's right.
But so it's to keep that arm's length, just so that you don't get muddled up into anything. Okay.
Exactly. So that's sort of your spectrum of finance professionals, if you will, from sort of bookkeeper to year-end accountant, with accountants in the middle who work for you, ranging from experience, depending on how small or big your company is.
Interesting. Yeah. Interesting.
Denise,
so
thank you for coming
when
on.
you left us, Phil, so what I told Denise, I said, because I thought she did an incredible job. She says she's nervous. She doesn't appear it. So I'm not too sure.
You're nervous?
Well, I hope I haven't thrown
Kenny
out.
Can be a little mean.
Oh my God! It's because you're so needy. You're trying. You're so asking for help. You scared the hell out of the poor girl. Jeez, Louise.
Listen, I was being receptive and open. You're the one buying cameras to try and offset your expenses.
Anymore. You know what? That's the last of my big examples. Okay, so forget Phil, Denise. We're back to you and me. So
it's so smooth. You're like,
honestly, zip it.
I bought 3 cameras, but
I did not say that. I said if someone did. I never said I did.
And I might buy another 4, but
oh my God, you're a beauty. You are a piece of work. I swear to God. So anyway, Phil, as I think what may happen with this one more than any other episode we have is people having probably specific parts or asking questions. So what I was saying to Denise, if she didn't mind, and because I thought she did a super job, is maybe whether it's quarterly or the half year coming back, and maybe
yes, please,
a little maybe where we do a little different prep is saying we're going to talk about ARAP. We're going to talk about cash flow. I mean, you've got to be cognizant of you too, Denise. You're a professional. You can't give advice, etc. So people need to understand that there's no advice given tonight. It's really, this is stuff you need to think about and seek advice. Like don't talk to the neighbor or the friend down the street unless they are the accountant, the lawyer.
Yeah, if they've got
the person. Right? If they're in that field, sure, talk away.
Yeah.
But otherwise, you probably should really seek a professional. Right. And someone like you that actually knows what the hell she's doing.
Well, thank you. I would definitely love to come back if there's an overwhelming response and there's lots of questions that your listeners have.
Cool.
We'd like that. It's awesome. We'll So
Hopefully I haven't scared everybody off with all my jargon and like terms and Excel sheets.
I think what'll happen, I think what yet happens, I think this episode is long overdue for our podcast because you're almost on the 200th podcast episode, right? And we've talked so many times about different things within the business, like, the pricing, COGS, inventory, cash flow, but never in depth because neither of us are accountants, obviously. So it's really nice to actually finally have someone on who can talk the talk and walk the walk. It's a different perspective. So I think people will be very receptive to it. They're probably all trying to figure out what the hell to do. So from here, I guess Phil's question usually is, if someone wanted to reach you, how would they do that, Denise?
Great question. Thank you. You can reach me on my website, which is dsquaredgroup.ca. My contact information and email is there. That's probably the easiest way. There's a form to fill out, and that's the easiest way. And of course, you can reach out to Phil and Ken. I'm sure that they can definitely connect us if that's something you're
as long as you're okay with that. So if someone did reach out, we can rifle your email off to them and say, hey, light it up. Okay.
You bet.
Okay.
You bet.
Awesome.
Awesome.
I do. I really appreciate it. I know you
really do.
And I don't mean to be light about it because most people are, because they think podcasting is that well, it's not radio. It's a different world, right? Is that I do appreciate you coming on, because I know you were a little bit nervous coming on, no different than we were when we probably started this podcast 3.5 years ago. So I do appreciate you coming on, and hopefully it wasn't that bad.
No worries. No, it was great. Obviously, one of my biggest whys, going back to my why, is giving people the knowledge, right? And the information so that you can make the decisions for yourself and take back power.
Very good. That's awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Denise.
Okay. We'll chat with you soon. Philly, stay on and we'll chat a little bit more. Thanks, Denise. I really appreciate it.
Okay.
Good night.
You bet.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Told you she was a smarty pants.
Yeah.
She knows her shit, right? She knows her stuff, and she's a lot like Tim was. They're just thoughtful. Like, and when they say that they're small business focused, they're small business focused, which I like. I mean, I know you do too. It's that kind of thing that
it's just the surrounding yourself with people that can help you, guide you.
Smart people that can actually help you through this. And without all kidding aside, it is you're running around sometimes as entrepreneurs to limit this tax, trying to find expenses, right? Because we do that. And you're looking for things, and then you're doing silly things like buying 3 or 4 or 10 cameras or whatever the hell it is, as opposed to maybe saying, you know what, I should just talk to somebody like that. And it's a legit expense, and it actually may help me grow this business so that I'm not running around doing stupid things, as opposed to some, smarter things. How do I plan this? What do I look for? Why do I do that? So I like those conversations.
I do
think
too.
She's good. She's really good. I really like working with her. I really do. I think she's really, really good.
Awesome.
So, that's it, my friend.
That's it. That's all I got.
I got nothing else for you either.
Yeah.
Do you want to stop recording? We can chat for a second or whatever you want.